Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new here, go ahead and check out my previous video. And for those of you returning, let's get started. Today's topic is going to be about accountability. Accountability. What do we know about that? Well, when we decide to do something and something goes right or something goes wrong, we hold ourselves responsible. In other words, accountable. So whether the result is positive or negative is all on us because we made that choice. We made the choice, for example, let's say I'm going to do my laundry today and I wake up at 10 a.m. in the morning and I have a whole hour to get things started. And I decided to sleep in. 11 a.m. comes around. I still haven't done anything. And next thing you know, time went goes by and I decided to do something else. And then again, I didn't get any laundry done. Now, whose fault is that? Mine. Why? Because I didn't do it. That's plain and simple. You hold yourself accountable. So the result you get is based on the effort and work you put into it. If you put no work or effort, you get negative result. When you actually apply yourself and actually do something, you get positive result. Most of us do not hold ourselves accountable for our action, our choices that we make. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a manager at work. He or she decided to take on a task that he or she knows that cannot be done when they do it themselves. So they decide to delegate the work to somebody else. However, if that work doesn't get done, they decided to blame the person they delegate the work to. Now think about that. Whose fault is that? Who's in the wrong? Who's in the right? Well, think about that. The manager wanted to take on the task that he or she couldn't handle. And when it didn't get done, he or she get mad at the person or upset or blame her colleague. Well, guess what? It wasn't the colleague's fault. You took on something that you couldn't handle. You took on something that you did not get done, which you agreed to take on. The lack of responsibility, the lack of accountability. So think about that. Another thing I noticed is that when people make resolutions, they tend to not follow through with it. Let me explain why. Let me give you an example. Most of us like to make resolutions such as losing weight, staying healthy, eating healthy, and just getting back in shape. Now, the reason why we never follow through is one very simple reason. Well, let's make that two. One is procrastination because you tend to, okay, I'm not going to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, I started today, so I give myself a pat on the back. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I can skip a day. I can skip 2 days. I can give myself a cheat meal 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And next thing you know, you just forget about it because you couldn't follow through. And why is that? And here's the other reason why. Because you got lazy. Sound familiar? Do you agree? I do. Because that was my excuse. Well, rather than that, that's a fact. I didn't do it before. That happened to me numerous times. Why? It's because I got lazy and I procrastinate because it's something I'm not used to. Well, think about that. When you're not used to something, it is very difficult. And that's okay. So just like my previous podcast, I talk about you have to stay committed. Because without that commitment, you're not going to follow through with what you do or what you say. So you have to hold yourself accountable. Think about that for a second. Our reason for not following through, 9 times out of 10, is because of laziness. And I brought that up in my previous podcast as well. When we're lazy, we don't like to be held responsible. When we procrastinate, we don't like to hold ourselves accountable. We like to blame, oh, it's too hot today. Oh, I didn't have the food to cook. Oh, someone was occupying the treadmill, or etc., etc. We call that excuses, justifying our behavior, and never, I mean never, hold ourselves accountable. If you expect result, you have to put in the work. You are not allowed to blame anyone else or anything else. If you do not commit, you will lose. If you want to win, you put in the work. You hold yourself accountable if you don't follow through with it. It's all on you. And it's okay because as time goes on, you will get better. Things will get easier because you're more familiar with it. And that's what I said earlier. When When we start a new resolution, we tend to not follow through because it's something new, it's hard, it's out of the norm, it's not part of our routine. But I promise you, if you stay committed to it, you will follow through. It will become so much easier. It become like nothing. It become more part of your life now. It become a part of your routine. But here's another thing: if something goes wrong, if you fall off the wagon, get back on it. Hold yourself accountable. You are responsible for your own action. You cannot blame anyone for that. If you didn't do it, it's on you. And I know I repeat that a couple times now. And I have to say it again. If you do not get the result you're looking for because you did not commit to it, you hold yourself accountable. And what happened when you hold yourself responsible for this? One simple reason, one simple way: you learn from it. Why didn't you follow through? Why did you fall off the wagon? Let's get to the example. You want to exercise. Now, you're telling me that you didn't go to the gym today because you were too tired, because you're sore. Well, did you expect that? Part of working out, you're going to be sore. You're working your muscles being engaged. It should be a great feeling eventually. I can't say from the beginning, but it will get easier. Now, if you don't follow through and you miss a day, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you? You tell yourself, because I got lazy, because I felt like I need to give myself an excuse, because I deserve it, or whatever excuses you want to give yourself. But most importantly, you have to be responsible for that. You make up that mistake. That's one way of doing things. So remember, you need to hold yourself accountable. And when you do hold yourself accountable, you're going to learn from that mistake, that thing you didn't do. And when you learn from that, you progress, you become stronger. Keep that in mind. When you learn from your mistake, and it's always okay to make mistakes, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn. In anything you do, whether it's work, life, school, relationship, there's always trials and errors. You learn from that. That's how we learn. You don't think that when people create something, for example, let's say when they made the first computer, you really think it worked the first time? Of course not. They have to figure things out. Okay, why didn't it work? Just like engineer, how they think. Okay, if this doesn't work, you find a solution. You find a way. You find an option. You cannot have one way of doing something. If you only have one way of doing something, you're telling me and yourself that you have no other option. You're out of option. And that is not true. Holding yourself accountable is very important. Because if you want to achieve a goal, if you want to achieve your aspiration, your dream, whatever it is, you learn from your mistake. You will run into the wall. You will run into hurdles. How do you find a way around it? How do you find a solution? Find a solution. Hold yourself accountable. Learn from your mistake. I remember quite a few years ago when the New York Yankees were coming to LA to play the Dodgers. And this was during the season. This wasn't a playoff game. It was the first time in such a long time. And I've been looking and waiting for that day to come. And it finally did. And I wanted to buy a ticket to the game, to the very first game. So I decided to call my friend, ask him, have you heard about this? Are you going to buy a ticket? He said, yeah, maybe. I'm like, okay, if you get one for me. Hang up. And the day before the game, I called him up again. And I was like, hey, did you get the ticket to the game? He's like, what game are you talking about? The Yankee and Dodgers. He's like, no, I never said I was going to get it. And all of a sudden, I got upset because I expected him to get the ticket for me. I expected him to go online and book the seat, that ticket for me. I expected him to do that. Well, what's wrong with that? Because it wasn't his responsibility. He didn't care about the game. I just assumed that. I just dropped the responsibility on him and not hold myself responsible. Now, that was my fault, and I didn't realize it. I decided to get upset at him, and we got into an argument, and we're still friends now, but I look back and think about that. That wasn't right. I almost lost a friend because of my stupidity. It's probably not as bad as that, but it was just my irresponsibility. That was my fault. And I should not have taken that out on him to justify my poor behavior and my laziness and my procrastination. If I want something to get done, I need to get it done myself. or I think most of us heard the word of, or the phrase, if you want something done, do it yourself. There's a lot of truth to that. If you want to get something done, do it yourself. Pretty straightforward. I think that's a very, very good advice. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys so much for listening to my podcast this week. I look forward to the next podcast. So go ahead, subscribe, hit the like, hit the bell. Any question, comment, leave it down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.